Yes, indeed, it's a beautiful, mostly cloudy day. Temperature 27 degrees in Abuja. Good morning. Welcome, Sunrise Daily. What you're seeing there is the Kubwa area of Abuja. Yes, the Kubwa Arab Road area. And truthfully, as I said, look at that fog just at the top of the screen. That's my favorite part of this view. And those, call it rocks, call it mountains or hills, whatever you want to call it, but I just love that view from here. It is beautiful, and it just tells you that what a day that is dawning. Up to you to decide what you want to do with it.
I mean, this particular part of Abuja has so many hiking trails, so many people, so much traffic at this time of the day, because it is one of the suburbs where a lot of people come to the town from. So this Kubwa Arab Road, a very busy place, and those hills there, it gives it a kind of aura, you know, even when you go there, you know, and that the people who live in this area are very, very busy. The roads are always so tight. There's always something going on in the Kubwa area, well, one of the suburbs of the nation's capital, but the Arab Road there, right there on your screens. Good morning. This is Sunrise Daily.
Well, I can't but acknowledge what you guys are saying about that. You know, Nessa, every time I see a view like that, I'm just looking at a movie. I mean, just imagine that picture color-graded in a movie. Oh, gosh. Anyway, good morning. It's a Thursday morning. I am actually 25th of April. That's the date. Have a welcome to the program, and we hope you have a wonderful time with us today. So what's happening today, guys?
Plenty is happening. Happening also is the fact that I'm thinking about you becoming a filmmaker. Wonder what's going on there. But before you become a filmmaker, what's happening?
No, but wait, before we talk about that, really, when next you come to Abuja, I'm taking you on that hike with me. Are you coming?
Oh, of course, but just make sure there is a chopper. I don't do roads. Okay. Thank you very much.
You don't do roads. Okay. All right, but today is World Malaria Day. Yes, that disease or that illness plagues the African continent and indeed Nigeria a lot. The statistics are alarming. At least 63 million cases reported in 2021 alone, and how many deaths there are. But hey, what's being done about curbing the menace of malaria? That conversation today. The Minister of Health and Supervising Minister of Sanitation is going to be talking about that. What will be done to curb this? All manner of interventions have happened. From the year 2000, we heard about the Rollback Malaria Day, mosquito nets being distributed, vaccines being spoken about last year, the R21 vaccine. What is the situation? Where we are? Where are we going to?
I mean, I think that's one of the major conversations today will be about that vaccine, because it's caused a lot of controversy. A lot of people do not believe in vaccines in Nigeria. A lot of people are very confused about what this means. So I'm hoping that it's going to make a lot of the conversations today when it comes to the celebration of World Malaria Day. So you want to be with us here on Channels Television, because we will be there giving you all the details. This press conference, it's going to be an opportunity for journalists to ask questions. And I think this vaccine issue is going to be one of the biggest questions. Is there a rollout? Should we get ready for it? You know, so that's coming up today. And also happening today, Mr. Emefiele's trial is going to be continuing today. Yeah. Yeah,
the trial of a former CBN governor, Godwin Emefiele, continues today in the FCT High Court. There are multiple charges that he has to answer to, and there are rumors, mark the word, rumors, that there are still more charges coming up. God knows, one wonders when all of this will end, but he has to answer to all of these charges. And many other people, besides Mr. Godwin Emefiele, that has questions to answer, you know, about the former Kogi State governor. We talked about that yesterday. And a lot of other people that need to answer to certain questions. Former governors also have questions to answer. EFCC has about 21 cases against former governors that are still pending. And hopefully all these questions will be answered real soon. Remember that summit they had yesterday, the Justice Summit 2020? 2024, all talking about how to move the judiciary on a new pedestal or to a better space where justice can be delivered as it ought to be to the Nigerian people.
Absolutely. We're going to talk about that shortly, but get ready for this one. And kudos to all of our very brave reporters who will be bringing all of these stories to us today. We will be at that MFLA trial today, just to bring up all the details. So stay with Channels Television. We're going to be.
I think I have something else. For you. I have something on the business side.
Yeah.
Yes. You know, business this morning is focusing on the credit culture in Nigeria. For those who have been victims of Shylocks and whatever other name you want to give to them, what is it? What are the laws around it? What understanding do you have? Where should you get a loan? For business, for personal use, whatever it is. Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. We'll give you the details at the next hour. In the meantime, let's take you through some of the papers this morning.
We begin a look at today's papers with the Vanguard newspaper, which leads with why power sector crisis won't end soon. That's ascribed to electricity workers, say frequent system collapse caused by technical other factors. Gencos say gas shortages, aging dilapidated machinery, inadequate power evacuation capacity. And discos are saying outdated, obsolete networks, inadequate maintenance of network equipment, low meter penetration. Poor supply becoming unbearable, according to CPPE. Our members still generate their power at high costs. So according to LCCI, we need huge investments. That's from an expert. The details continue on the inside pages of the Vanguard newspaper today. Nigerian News Direct leads with hardship. FG kicks off 100 billion naira consumer credit scheme. Civil servants to benefit in first phase. That's the lead story of the Nigerian News Direct this morning. Next is the Daily Times newspaper talking about the justice reforms. Tinubu to judiciary undertake reforms for functional justice system. And look at the riders, says much can be achieved when institutions of government unite to acknowledge their challenges and brainstorm. Akpabio seeks urgent reform in approach of interlocutory appeals in civil cases. CGN charges judiciary to leverage technological innovation to address graft, inefficiency, undue influence. Details of that one you'll find on the inside pages. Right below the picture on the front page of the Daily Times newspaper this morning of rescued hostages held by terrorists in Borno and Yobe states by the Nigerian Army, FG revokes 924 dormant mining licenses as minister decries racketeering. Find the details of that story on the inside pages of the Daily Times newspaper this morning. This Nigeria newspaper leads with that same story, racketeering destroying the mining industry. FG laments, revokes 924 dormant titles, gives 30 days to defaulters to rectify status. Details you find as you flip the pages. Right above that story, mechanized agriculture will combat rising food prices. Experts seek more funding for sector. The Daily Independent newspaper leads with this one. Keyamo lacks power to suspend Dana Air. That's ascribed to aviation experts. Say it's gross interference on safety procedures. We're yet to receive any letter from NCAA. That's according to a source at Dana. Find the details on the inside pages. Of course, the Daily Independent newspaper also adds its voice to the justice reform story. Tinubu asks judiciary to ensure reforms guaranteeing Nigerians' well-being. Fabio assures National Assembly will deliberate enshrine reforms into law. The Guardian newspaper leads with FG's non-retention policy. Over 5,032 first-class graduates languish amid vacancies in varsities. What does all of that mean? Some of the infographic on the front page will give you an inkling of what the story is about this morning. EFCC withdraws appeal against order restraining Yahya Bello's arrest. What does that mean? Well, the story is right there in the Guardian newspaper today. Daily Trust newspaper, corruption, undue influence, undermining our justice system. That's according to the CJN. Tinubu NBA demand judiciary reforms. Curb ex-parte order abuse. Akpabio tells NJC. Politicians, not judges, to blame. That's according to Yadudu. What does all of that mean? The details you'll find on the inside pages. Look at that story at the bottom of the picture. Concerns as fuel queues worsen in Abuja, Lagos, others. Find the details on the inside pages of the Daily Trust newspaper this morning. New Telegraph. Constitutional amendment. Oyedele Tax Reforms Committee wants defaulters declared unfit for political polls. Do you agree with him? Well, you may need some other details. Says aspirants must fulfill all tax obligations. Sends draft proposal to National Assembly. Proposes creation of revenue court. Others. Find the details on the inside pages of the New Telegraph newspaper this morning. To Business Day newspaper, foreign investors return to Nigeria stocks as inflows quintuple. What does that mean? Well, sounds like good news, but check the details on the inside pages. The Nigerian Observer is next. Tinubu explores trade, investment, security cooperation with the Netherlands. Country accounted for 15% of Nigeria's export in Q4 of 2023. Check the details of that story on the front page and continues on the inside pages of the Nigerian Observer this morning. So those are some of the papers we're tracking for you today. What's your pick?
Indeed. What's my pick? Ayo, Guardian. That first story on the Guardian speaks loud and clear. There was a time when scholars longed for the classrooms. They studied so that they will end up as professors. They study so that they can impart knowledge. Now you have how many? Look at the numbers on the front page of the Guardian. 280, University of Lagos, 81. 241, University of Ibadan, University of Ilorin, and all the Nigeria's major universities. See, first-class graduates sitting back, no jobs, or they're not, and there are vacancies in the universities. So what makes the classroom what has made the classroom unattractive to these ones who, under normal circumstances, I mean, if you go to in some other climes, it's only the best that are brought into the classrooms to pass on knowledge to others. But ours, we have the best wanting to go out into the banks. They want to go into the oil companies. They want to go out into other fields. They're not thinking of sharing the knowledge they have. They're not thinking of equipping others for the tomorrow. Probably because they feel that they were not equipped. Probably. But how can we turn this around? How can we turn this around? Where the best will want to stay back. Where the best will be sought after. You know what? Stay back and help us pass on this knowledge. Even the lecturers in the classrooms are not even telling the first-class graduates or the best graduating students to stay and help. They're not even moved to tell them anymore, probably because they feel like they're being hard done by.
I mean, the country's changed drastically.
Mm.
And, you know, speaking of education, I don't know, I want to say on a lighter note, but I don't want to think this is light, because one of the reasons why our education system has a problem, look at it from the leadership newspaper, from JAM, UTME, father arrested for impersonating his son. To write JAM is at the top there. More on it from page 6 of the leadership newspaper. The idea of excellence, you know, you remember what it was like? We all wanted to have a first class. We all wanted to, if you had a 2-2, if you graduated with a 2-2,
you won't even mention your results.
You'll be so embarrassed.
You won't even mention your results in public.
Anyway, what stood out for me, and I think we're going to be talking about that later, is from the This Day newspaper. There, Tinubu says we need more functional justice systems to protect the rights of all citizens, and this is absolutely correct. It's going to form a lot of the conversations that we have today from This Day newspaper. He declared open the National Summit on Justice. We're going to bring up that report for you later. And Akpabio also wants the abuse of ex parte order curbed. We all do. We owe President our achievement, says Ariwola. But there, more functional justice system to protect the rights of all citizens. From the This Day newspaper, that's what stood out for me this morning. And it's, like I said earlier, it's going to be what we're talking about today. But that particular area in the dispensation of justice and in creating a nation that we can all trust, one that the Nigerian can say, I can stand on my rights, knowing that I will be protected by the justice system. That is one that we all need, because you see, the law may not change the heart, but it will stop the heartless. So, you know, when people can trust their systems, there are many things that we won't see anymore. People stop taking the laws into their own hands. We'll stop seeing a lot of these jungle justice stories that we're seeing going around the country, because we can trust our justice system to do what's right, give us the justice that we need when we have been wronged. So this is a very important thing for me, and you can get more on it from the This Day newspaper this morning. Ayo, what stood out for you this morning?
Well, for me, it's the Vanguard newspaper this morning. And electricity workers were proffering positions on why the power sector crisis won't end soon. And we've also heard from the riders on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper. We see Gencos giving their reasons, we see Discos giving their reasons, but what none of them has spoken to is the effect and impact on the Nigerian economy generally. The private sector is speaking out, and the job losses that are going to occasion from this, no one is even talking about that. When the Discos, for instance, are saying the reason that the power sector crisis won't end soon is because of outdated, obsolete networks, inadequate maintenance of network equipment, low meter penetration and all. Question I'm going to ask straight up is, how is that the consumer's business? It's a business. You wanted to get in the business. You applied to buy the licenses. You got on the train. You got the contract. Now you have the business. All we want, let there be light. That's all. Whatever collaborations that are necessary, can we get on with it? We hear that some 11 discos are being redirected or repossessed or repositioned, whatever it is. All Nigerians want is power supply. And low penetration of meters, who is that? Is that the consumer's fault? Who exactly bears the brunt of these things? It's the consumers. And now we have Band-Aid, as some people are calling it Band-Aid now, whatever it is. As far as people are concerned, it is let there be light. That's all. Whatever the reasons are, no one is shouting about telecoms anymore. Let there be light. Let these issues be resolved in a way that Nigerians can say we are getting value for money. Band A consumers are complaining now. And no one seems to be talking to the people, empathizing with the people, helping people to understand what the issues are. Just let there be light. And let someone speak to Nigerians wherever we are. We deserve it, don't we? But that's the much of the papers we can take this morning. So let's take a short break. When we return, it's time to get into the nitty-gritty.
With Glovo, you order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Glovo deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Glovo, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
One platform, three venues, three summits. Summit 1, the theme, Women in Business and Women in Tech. Summit 2, Intrapreneurship for senior and middle managers. Summit 3, Entrepreneurship, building a business from scratch. Speakers at Summit 1, Women in Business and Women in Tech are Ibukun Awoshika, Nike Ogunlesi, Eyitope Kola Oyeneyi, Bode Abifari, and Nkebet Meshele. Date 1st of May 2024. Venue is the Covenant Temple, Lekki, former 4th Roundabout, Chisco Bus Stop, Lekki. Time 9 a.m. Admission is free. To register, visit www.theplatformnigeria.com/register. This event will be broadcast live on Channels Television. Powered by the Covenant Nation Global.
Do you know that you can now print all your essential items for events without even having to leave your home? It's the Cast Prints Combo Deal for all events.
Yes!
Weddings, conferences, birthdays, burials, etc. Starting from 495,000 naira only. You get 50 invites, 50 A2 size posters, 50 16-page brochures, 1 large backdrop banner, 1 roll-up banner, 50 jotters with pens, and 50 souvenir carrier bags. Whatever event you're planning, we can adjust to your budget and quantities. Just send your pictures and other information through WhatsApp, and we shall send a design for your approval. Approve your design, and we will produce with super high-quality digital print technology. We can even arrange delivery to your location. Call us now on 0913-156-5016 or 0812-794-9323 or visit our social media pages. Cast Prints, digital printing at super speed.
Converged for the 2024 National Summit on Justice at the National Judicial Institute, Abuja. Vice President Kashim Shettima, Senate President Senator Godswill Akpabio, and the Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Olukayode Ariwola, lead the three arms of government to the summit, which focuses on repositioning the justice system. The Minister of Justice and the President of the Nigerian Bar Association sets the tone for the discussion, which is the advancement of the sector and implementation of the national policy on justice.
The policy seeks to promote and protect human rights and access to justice, which are essential features of a functional justice system. It proposes critical and sustainable interventions in the implementation of statutory provisions, encouraging protection of human rights and access to justice.
The position of the judiciary is no less the position of any of the security agencies. Because if you do not deliberately invest in the judiciary, then you are ignoring the very fabric, the very foundation on which this country stands.
This call is buttressed by the Chief Justice of Nigeria. He underscores the importance of rebuilding the trust of Nigerians in the judiciary.
The quest for justice should not be a privilege reserved for the few, but a right accessible to all, regardless of their circumstances. Therefore, it is incumbent upon us to embark on a journey of comprehensive reform to ensure that justice is not only dispensed, but also perceived to be dispensed fairly and impartially.
The Senate President has some recommendations for the judiciary, especially as it concerns political cases.
We must try and curb the misuse of ex parte orders in political matters, particularly by our judges, by the judiciary. To curb this, it is imperative that the National Judicial Council, the NJC, exercises stringent oversight we recommend prompt and decisive punishment. Oh, I was going to say for judges, but maybe for the officers involved, who are found to abuse this authority in any manner.
President Bola Tinubu, who was represented by Vice President Kashim Shettima, urged the judicial officers to work towards strengthening the judiciary and be accountable to Nigerians.
The impact of their reform efforts should be visible in terms of improved access to justice, strengthen integrity of justice sector institutions, increase timeliness and quality of justice delivery, accountability, and transparency of the system.
The focal point at the 2024 National Justice Summit is accountability and transparency. Many Nigerians are expecting the arms of government will match words with actions. Emanuela Ekele, Channels Television News.
Let's begin today with that conversation around the justice sector reforms, which is an issue that's been on the burner for quite a while. As you saw earlier, Mr. Wahab Shitu joins us this morning. He's a senior advocate of Nigeria. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Perhaps we should quickly begin with that ongoing conversation about the EFCC and the former governor of Kogi State. What do you make of it? There are those who have said the way the EFCC went about it was wrong. There are those who are arguing whether or not it's a case that the EFCC should have been involved or not, been involved in or not. There are those who are also saying, why don't the governor just do what the Attorney General has said? Present yourself to the EFCC and we'll deal with the other details later.
I think my response will be that how do we perceive what EFCC is doing? Is it in our collective national interest, or is something that we should wish away as unnecessary? I think we all agree that what EFCC stands for is in the overall national interest. EFCC is a statutory body created by law to deal with the phenomenon of economic and financial crimes. And so everybody should support it. The high, the low, all Nigerians should give EFCC all the necessary support. EFCC is our collective enterprise.
Yeah, we agree, but the challenge is the question of whether or not it's a financial crime or it's a corruption case, which in this case would be the business of the ICPC.
You see, the functions of EFCC and ICPC overlaps. When you talk of economic and financial crimes, you are also talking of a species of corruption. You understand me? What EFCC is doing, what ICPC, both of them are working towards the same goal, combating corruption in the land. I think the answer is simple. Let us recognize the fact that no matter how big anyone is, the law is bigger. We operate a democracy by the rule of law. All are subject to the rule of law. Whether you are a governor, whether you are an ordinary citizen, whoever you are, so long as you don't enjoy immunity, then you must answer when the law calls. So I think that we should leave it at that. I don't want to prejudge anything.
Well, I understand that, but
yes.
perhaps just this one thing.
Yes.
From what you said now,
yes.
If the ICPC and the EFCC seem to be doing similar work, are you saying they should be merged?
Well, it is for the authorities to decide what they want to do in terms of merger or what. But you see, the functions of each of them is specified in their enabling status. What I'm saying that in generic terms, both of them are dealing with the issue of corruption. You understand what I'm saying? And we all know that corruption is the elephant in the room. So if you need to create as many agencies as possible to deal with this elephant in the room, why not? Well, right? So, but whether we need to centralize a single body, it's also one of for justice reform.
Well, talking about justice reforms, is this something, are such mergers likely? Perhaps in the light of what you just said now, we recall the president talking about implementing to some measure the Oyonsari report. Do you think this justice reform program ongoing right now is something in that light?
Of course. The Oyonsari report by popular acclamation. Is a studied report, and I'm glad that the government is looking at that in that direction to see how we can implement the recommendations contained in that report to deliver efficiency and effectiveness in our administration generally.
Now, let's speak specifically to the issue of reforming the justice system. A lot has been said from the meeting of yesterday. The vice president speaking for the president of the Senate making his own statements and all of that, and of course the CJN also making his own comments. Which of these issues raised so far by these heads of the three arms of government stands out the most for you?
Well, I think first of all we need to commend the Attorney General of the Federation for putting in place this summit. It's like walking the talk. He promised he was going to ensure that there's reform of our justice system. And he's really walking the talk. To that extent, we need to salute it. Well, it's a stakeholders problem. Reforming the justice delivery system is a stakeholders challenge. All stakeholders in the administration of justice must key into the agenda. Stakeholders at the level of the judiciary, at the level of the National Assembly, at the level of the executive, and even critical agencies like the prisons, the police, or including non-governmental organizations. We all need to key to this agenda. And in keying to this agenda, we need to answer 5 basic questions. Why? Why do we need to reform the justice delivery system in Nigeria today? First of all, we need to reposition our justice delivery system. Secondly, we need to ensure that we have constitutional reform, statutory reforms, and even operational reforms of the judiciary. We need to ensure that our judiciary is seen to be more transparent, more accessible, more fair. There's fairness in our justice delivery system. The challenge is how accessible is our judiciary to all and sundry. We also need to engender public confidence in our justice delivery system. We need to ensure access and efficiency in the way the justice delivery system conducts its affairs. And of course, we need to deliver on speed and transparency. And then there's also the need to ensure that there's increased budgetary allocation to the justice delivery sector in order to be able to enhance their performance. Those are some of the reasons why we need to reform our justice delivery system. Now, what are the problems? Some of them have been highlighted. One, there's delayed trials and backlog of cases. Secondly, there's alleged, the Chief Justice of the Federation, alluded to it, alleged corruption and inadequate infrastructural facilities and resources. For limited access to justice, especially for those in the rural areas. And then we have incidents of human rights violations, unlawful detention, torture, and how to deal with that. Inefficient investigation and prosecution of cases. We have issues of overcrowding and poor prison conditions, limited judicial independence.
Quite a lot of issues.
Yes.
Let's speak quickly to that independence that you talked about. I think it was last week we were having this conversation, or was it earlier this week? We were having this conversation with 2 gentlemen. And one of them, particularly a former AIG, was saying that interference of the judicial or the process of the judiciary is a problem for the police force, that they arrest someone or they put someone in, and they begin the prosecution of someone, and then from somewhere, some call will come Does that, when you say interference, is that the kind of interference you're alleging? Are you saying that sometimes even judges are compelled to drop cases or judge in a particular favor?
I think we must be frank to ourselves. Incidents of political interference, elite interference.
On the judges?
On the process generally.
At what point?
At all stages of the process. And what is, and the CJN alluded to that, allow the judiciary to do its job. The judiciary is a very important arm of the government in stabilizing our democracy. If you want to enhance constitutionalism, enhance respect for rule of law, enhance respect for rights protection, accountability and transparency, and even deliver good governance. In all of these, processes, it requires the judiciary. So you should allow the judiciary to perform its functions with little or no interference. Some of the cause that you have alluded to is unnecessary. When cases are submitted for adjudication by the judges, the expectation worldwide is that the judiciary must be allowed to do its work, devoid of interference, devoid of intimidation, devoid of blackmail.
Mr. Shitu, there are those who would also say sometimes, because when I hear people say the system is made of people, not machines. So is there a way, okay, maybe I should ask it this way, how vulnerable is the judiciary? How vulnerable are judges? How vulnerable is the entire judicial process in the country? And what makes us vulnerable?
Thank you. Well, let me say for free that in spite of all the imperfections, our judiciary still remains the best, not only in Africa, but in the Commonwealth. But in spite of the fact that we deliver this impressive showing, these judges, for crying out loud, are human beings. These judges live within the society. These judges have associations. They have relations. And these judges too, have, they operate within the society. And so elements within the society, directly or indirectly, are capable of, mounting pressures on and putting pressure on our judicial officers. But I'm happy to report that majority of our judges resist these pressures, in spite of the challenges that they face. Challenges of inadequate infrastructure, challenges of inadequate resources, challenges of inadequate remuneration. The environment under which they work are not conducive. In spite of this, they still deliver justice.
Well, it's there's something that that is common in the judiciary or judicial parlance. Justice delayed is justice denied. Now, to some of the cases that we hear, particularly political cases or similar, cases, we hear a situation where even the CGN has complained time without number that judges should stop delivering conflicting judgments, giving conflicting orders. Is this part of the vulnerability?
Well, that is part of it. Judicial pronouncements ought to be certain, ought to be predictable, in line with settled legal principles. So when you have incidents of conflicting judgments, it's unhealthy for the system. It's something that, and I want to also inform you that the judiciary is aware of this problem and is dealing with it through internal, mechanisms.
How? Because there are those who would wonder how effective that internal mechanism has been, particularly in this current case of the former governor of Kogi State, Yahaya Bello, where on the one hand, a state high court gave an order, on the other hand, a federal high court gave a conflicting order to that. That's the assumption that some people are making. And it's not the first time. Even in the current, the political dispensation that we have, we've had such similar cases as well. So how is the judiciary dealing with it when it is still persistent?
Well, the National Judicial Council, in its oversight, responsibilities, is dealing with it at that level. And then pronouncements have been made against such practices. And then mechanisms have been put in place to stem the tide. And then you keep on referencing this issue of Yaya Bello. But I think it is clear that no court of law can stop a statutory body from... No one can stop anyone from being prosecuted except you enjoy immunity. That is elementary. If you are accused of any crime, go and answer to it. That is so elementary. No court will say, oh, EFCC should not perform its functions. No court can say, okay, a court should be prevented from sitting. No court will say, we will stop the National Assembly from sitting.
So what then do you make of that order from the State High Court in Kogi?
Clearly, it's per incuriam. You know what I mean?
No, I don't.
I mean, it is delivered, that order was delivered in ignorance of the law. But you know that judges are entitled, they have jurisdiction to be right, as well as jurisdiction to be wrong. That is when, in cases where judges err, there's a mechanism for appeal. And that is why we have the highest court of the land, to correct incidents of, erroneous pronouncement. But I want to tell you for free that EFCC statutorily cannot be stopped from performing its statutory functions of investigation and prosecution of crimes.
Now, my colleagues in Abuja will take you up on a number of other issues, but in your response to this one, what do you make of the need for infusing technology? I mean, you've talked about the judgments in rural areas and areas where, those things, and it's not so easy to have access to justice. How will technology help? Particularly in the light of the fact that technology is a lot more recent than the law itself.
Thank you.
How do you
Thank you. That is part of this reform agenda. And you saw the keynote address of the Senate President, also talking about that. In order to enhance speed, to enhance transparency, and also to bring our justice delivery system to be in line with best practices, we need to leverage on technology and digital tools in order to, ensure that our justice delivery system is prompt, takes advantage of speed, and other, advantages of technology. Technology will impact positively on the justice delivery system. For instance, most of our judges write in longhand, but through technology, you have devices like to record proceedings, and then make some of these. It encourages judges to be able to listen to testimonies without having to write in longhand and some other things. So there are various ways, even the filing system, filing of processes, and even virtual delivery of hearings, and some other digital tools can enhance the justice delivery system.
Interestingly, Mr. Shitu, I'm just wondering how that is going to... Are we also going to have judges dictate their judgments to technology? Don't answer that one yet. Let's take a short break, and then my colleagues will take it over from Abuja.
One platform, three venues, three summits. Summit 1, the theme, Women in Business and Women in Tech. Summit 2, Intrapreneurship for Senior and Middle Managers. Summit 3, Entrepreneurship, Building a Business from Scratch. Speakers at Summit 2, Intrapreneurship for Senior and Middle Managers are Mrs. Rolake Akinkube Filani, Mrs. Folake Shueton, Mr. Osinachi Ibeneme, Mr. Olumide Balogun, Mrs. Indide Ukaonu, and Mrs. Bemi Atibomo. Venue is the Marriott Hotel, Joel Ogunaike, GRA Ikeja, Lagos. Time, 9 a.m. Admission is free. To register, visit www.theplatformnigeria.com/register. This event will be broadcast live on Channels Television. Powered by the Covenant Nation Global.
With Glovo, you order anything you want, and when you receive it, you celebrate with your whole body. Because when that tasty grilled chicken is here, the weekend starts. The ingredients for your favorite recipe just in time. And when the cake arrives, the party is on. Because receiving anything on Glovo deserves a dance. Download the app, order anything you want, and track it minute by minute until it arrives. Glovo, order anything, we deliver in minutes.
Thank you for staying with us and welcome back. Mr. Shitu, I know you've made a couple of assertions in the course of this conversation today, but I just want to take you back a little bit. Yesterday we had a conversation here and one of our guests mentioned the need to build institutions. In his assertion, he said that if institutions are not built, if the individuals are continually appearing stronger than the institutions, then we may not have the kind of systems that we want to have. You've talked about the judiciary, and one of the things you said was that the judiciary must be allowed to do its job. How can the judiciary be allowed to do its job if there are interferences? Because the institution of the judiciary is not strong in itself, in terms of equipment and resources with which to function effectively.
Thank you. One way the judiciary can be allowed to do its job is for us to deliver to the judiciary financial autonomy. The judiciary does not have to go cap in hand, begging for funds to service its operations. We must deliver not just physical independence to the judiciary. We must also grant to the judiciary financial autonomy. The judiciary should be allowed to draw funds from the first line charge. The judiciary should have its own budget. Unhindered, enough funds should be provided for the judiciary to meet not only operational expenses, but also, and then the judiciary must be well paid at all levels in terms of remuneration. And then the judicial officers must also be properly taken care of, even after retirement. There should be such incentives that will attract to the judiciary the best men and women. Because you cannot talk of democracy without rule of law. And central to the rule of law is the place of the judiciary. The judiciary, in fact, I dare say, is the most important tier of government in a democracy. Because that is if you talk of respect for constitutionalism, that is the terrain of the judiciary. Respect for the rule of law, that is the terrain of the judiciary. Independent electoral process, free, fair electoral process, that is the terrain of the judiciary. If you are talking of transparency and zero tolerance for corruption, that is the terrain of the judiciary. If you are talking of good governance, It is the judiciary that can hold all the tiers of government accountable to deliver effectively on good governance. So, judiciary, a democracy without respect for the judiciary, is not a democracy. In fact, that's the rule of the jungle. So if you want the new democracy, I'm not talking of cash and carry democracy. I'm not talking of democracy by anointing. If we want real genuine democracy, then we must empower the judiciary. We must allow judiciary to be peopled by best men and women. You should not interfere in judicial appointments. Judiciary is not a place where you say, oh, I want to favor my, I want to favor those, I want to patronize some people and reward them with judicial appointments. That is not the place. You are not allowing the judiciary to function effectively when you interfere in judicial appointments, when you interfere in the way the judiciary conducts its business, when you blackmail the judiciary, when disputes are submitted to the judiciary, allow the judiciary to perform its functions. We saw what happened during the election.
If I may come in here.
In the aftermath of the election.
Mr. Shitu, if I may be allowed to come in here, the matter of financial autonomy is a conversation that's been on and on. I mean, around the year 2022 or thereabout, judiciary workers shut down all the courts because of implementation of financial autonomy. In other words, it's already there, but implementation is another part of it. But then some will say that those who are supposed to hold the executives, the leadership of the judiciary in itself, is not even ready for the financial autonomy that they are asking for. Would you say that there's a problem with that?
Well, I want to disagree with you. I think it's elements outside the judiciary that are not ready to deliver to judiciary financial autonomy. When we are talking of financial autonomy, we are not just talking of judicial officers alone. We are also talking of elements who service the judiciary, like judicial staff and judicial workers. And where the judiciary has made its representations in various fora, even to the legislature and to the executive, about the challenges. Everybody is aware about the peculiar challenges of our judice. It is not that they are not aware, but the question is walking the talk beyond rhetorics. For instance, the 2-day summit which took place in Abuja itemized 17 thematic areas for judicial reform. Are we ready to incorporate this into our constitutional framework in terms of amendments? So it is not that these ideas are not being put forward. Regularly, the stakeholders have been making, recommendations, far-reaching recommendations on how the judiciary can be made effective and efficient, how judiciary can be made more independent and autonomous. But the stakeholders, the ruling elite, are they willing to deliver to the judiciary what is rightly, due to the judiciary? That's the question. I listened to the Senate president. He said, beyond this talk, that the National Assembly has a lot of, there's a committee of the National Assembly on constitutional amendment. There's also a committee of the National Assembly on electoral reforms. They must translate some of the recommendations coming out of this 2-day summit into realistic policies and laws.
Mr. Shitu, if I may come in here, because on that particular point, that's where we're trying to build this on. You've talked about quite a lot of issues that have to do with the judiciary, interference, financing, but there was something else that you mentioned. You talked about that High Court judgment in, I hope I'm getting that right, that court judgment that came from Kogi State. And you said, I'm going to quote you right now, it was delivered in ignorance of the law. Now, for a segment of our nation that's supposed to be, you said, the most important, how are lapses like this even possible? How can a judgment be given in ignorance of the law in a time when we're trying to deliver proper justice to all of the people of Nigeria who are looking to the judiciary right now to stand for them. How was this possible?
Thank you. If you look at our constitutional framework, we have three tiers of the hierarchy of the court system. We have the High Court, we have the Court of Appeal, we have the Supreme Court. It is because the system also recognizes that one person sitting as a High Court judge may make mistakes. And that is why there's a mechanism for appeal. At the level of the Court of Appeal, you have 3 justices coming to take a second look at what has been done at the level of the High Court. And if you are still aggrieved, you can proceed to the Supreme Court, where you have 5 justices, eminent justices. And if it relates to constitutional questions, 7 justices will be a panel to address the issue. It is because and it is after that decision at the apex court is final. So the High Court can make mistakes. Every judge has the jurisdiction to be right, as well as the jurisdiction to be wrong. And that is why we have a mechanism for appeal. So when I say judgment is delivered in ignorance of the law,
how do we stop judges from making these mistakes? This, Mr. Shitty, if you can hear me, this particular mistake, because that's what you've called it, a mistake. How do we check judges to make sure that they don't make mistakes like this? I'm saying, it was a mistake, well, we can appeal it, you know, and whatnot. How do we stop judges from making these sorts of mistakes?
Well, there are various ways. First of all, ensure that the quality of judges that are appointed to adjudicate over our cases is very high. Nigerians parade some of the best legal brains, not only in Africa, but in the continent. I mean, in the Commonwealth. In the world, we are respected. We found elements from, our system here, adjudicating even at the level of International Court of Justice. We should ensure that in the appointment of judges and justices, we appoint the best in terms of knowledge, in terms of character, in terms of learning. Secondly, we must avoid interference in judicial appointments. Thirdly, our judges must constantly take benefit of training and retraining in order to align themselves with current state of the law and best practices. Fourthly, we must activate our disciplinary mechanisms at the level of the NJC to check judges who run foul of settled legal principles. Fourthly, we must accelerate the process of our appeal system to ensure that when mistakes are made at the lower court, they can be promptly corrected by the appellate court, taking advantage of speed. And that's why we need to ensure that our justice delivery system, does not suffer unnecessary delays.
A quick one before we wrap this up. We've talked about the judges, justices, and the rest of them, but we have not talked about the legal practitioners, the lawyers themselves.
Yes.
Sometimes you know where this case is going, yet you file it anyway.
Yes.
We had a situation where one judge had to tell a lawyer, this thing is not going to fly. Why did you even make the move in the first place? So what do we do in that regard? Because sometimes they are the ones that literally put the judges, in the line of fire, so to speak.
That's why I'm saying that when we are talking of reform, all these problems, it's a stakeholders a problem. It's not judges alone that you single out for blame, even lawyers too. That is why we should activate our disciplinary, mechanisms. Lawyers who make mistakes or who commit fundamental infractions can be brought to book through our disciplinary procedures. Again, beyond these reforms that we are talking about, we need a change in mindset. We need a change in attitude.
You're talking about Nigerians generally?
I mean stakeholders generally.
Okay.
In the administration of justice. There should be a change in attitudinal chemistry of our lawyers, of our judges, and of those who make use of the court system.
Okay. Well, that's a very tall order because, yes. Attitudinal change is something that we've been talking about for quite a while. on this program, particularly for every Nigerian. It's an ongoing conversation, and let's see how this whole reform system pans out in the coming days. Thank you so much for being here this morning with us.
Thank you.
Wahab Shitu is a senior advocate of Nigeria. We appreciate your time today.
Thank you for inviting me.
Well, one of the other issues that usually would catch attention is how does the law help business grow? I don't know if that is part of the conversation coming up next on Business Morning on Sunrise Daily.
That's right. Thank you so much, Ayo. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Yes, we have a lot of conversations for you. Guess what? We can even discuss malaria on business. We'll have that on the program. But first of all, let's start from our usual space, which is the global space. Looking at oil prices, it steadied on Thursday after settling lower in the previous day. Signs of retreating fuel demand in the United States, which is the world's biggest oil user, contended with widening conflict risks in the key Middle East production area. Now let's look at the numbers for the oil prices. We see that Brent has gained 0.2%. It's now up to $88.20 a barrel. WTI of the United States is also green. Same percentage, 0.2, but it's at $82.94. We've seen a lot of positive movement or gains, depending on what side of the divide you're on. On the WTI, we see it's at $82.94. The space, the gap between both of them, that's Brent and WTI, doesn't seem to be much. Now let's see the factors driving the oil prices. We see data from the U.S. Energy Information Administration yesterday, Wednesday, showed that gasoline stockpiles fell less than forecast, reflecting signs of slowing demand. That's one. The falling fuel demand is occurring amid signs of U.S. business activity in April. We saw those numbers. And of course, we know that the tension going on in the Middle East is also a major driver. Other EIA data on Wednesday showed that crude stockpiles slumped by 6.4 million barrels to 453.6 million barrels compared with expectations, which was at about 825,000 barrels. So that is one driver of the prices, oil prices. That is, we come to Nigeria, tracking the Naira as usual, and we see that we're still on that negative trend for the Naira. Yesterday, NAFEM lost 0.64% and to settle at 1,308 Naira 52. We restarted this week with about 1,100. Unfortunately, we have seen the Naira drop now to more than 1,300 as at Wednesday. And but we see that the gap between NAFEM and NAFEX seems to be closing. Guess what? The Naira has more value in the parallel market than in the official market. That's the situation now, an odd one, but that's what we're seeing in Nigeria at this time. NAFEX closed 1,309 Naira 7 kobo and opened yesterday 1,278 Naira 68 kobo, 2.38%. And this is in spite of that intervention we saw from the central bank 2 days ago, even though that was directed at the BDCs. Perhaps that's why the Naira is still stronger in the black market. Well, talking about stronger Naira and economic matters, yesterday we did talk about the issue of credit to the private sector, which the central bank had placed as of January more than 93% increase. That's supposed to be good news, but it seems that there's still the need for credit to the real sector. And CIB and Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria had that conversation at their meeting. One of the personalities who were at that meeting, I caught up with him and dragged him to the studio. The former managing director of the Bank of Industry, Mr. Wahid Olagunju. He is also the chief executive officer of WVL Development Advisors. Mr. Olagunju, I dragged you from a CIBN event to the studio. Thank you so much for honoring us.
It's my pleasure being here.
Yeah, so there we're talking about the issue of credits
to the private sector. And I know you shared an interesting perspective, which is the role of culture and behavior, when it comes to that, because when we see the availability of liquidity in the banking sector is one thing, but getting it across to the real sector is another one. And you've headed Bank of Industry, so you have first-hand information on that. Let us know, help us to understand how the true picture is when it comes to giving credit to the real sector.
Thank you very much. It's a pity that about 64 years after independence, we're still having challenges financing small and medium enterprises in this country, particularly those promoted by Nigerian entrepreneurs, because the reactions are coming more from them than from the large corporates or even expatriates who operate in the Nigerian economy. And that's because we've paid a lot of attention to supply side issues and not demand side. When we talk about availability, it's like perhaps the funds have not been there, but my contention is that the funds have always been there, but what we have in short supply is the deal flows in terms of bankable projects, right, promoted by Nigerians. Now, that speaks to why the lenders are reluctant to support those SMEs. And there are a lot of challenges in this area. You talked about culture. It's unfortunate that in most cases, as we've had the AMCON management lament, that most of those bad debts arose out of the poor attitude of most Nigerians to credit. It's unfortunate that many people want to access credit with the intention of not paying back, right? So when you, as a lender, when you're appraising a project, before looking at the business side of it, the business model, you are busy dealing with the character issue. Who is the entrepreneur? Who are you dealing with? Because character is the most important in the 5 C's of credit. Because even where an entrepreneur meets the other 4 issues, like collateral, capacity, capital, and condition, where the character is deficient, the best practices do not deal. So that speaks to attitude. We need to have a positive attitude to credit. That would make the lenders perhaps relax more when they are dealing with you. In other climes, we have a credit culture. From childhood, you know that you need to have a good credit score to thrive in any society. Even to have a phone plan with a GSM operator, they'll check your credit. To rent an apartment or purchase a property, in anything you want to do, they check your credit. Because the credit score says a lot about you. So we need to put in place a lot of things in our ecosystem that will de-risk, right, potential lenders who we deal with in the market. So we need to have rating agencies. Like in India, they have what they call the SMERA, Small and Medium Rating Agency, Small and Medium Enterprise Rating Agency of in India. And that speaks to the credit corporation, Consumer Credit Corporation, that has just been floated in Nigeria. For that corporation to work efficiently, they need to address the credit culture of Nigerians. I mean, I have immense confidence in the young man who's been appointed to lead the system there. One of the things he needs to do, advocacy role, is to ensure that we have a good credit culture in Nigeria. We need to de-risk our entrepreneurs.
But we have credit rating companies now.
Most of those rating agencies deal with large corporates. When we talk of credit culture, we're talking at the individual level. And then nano entrepreneurs, for example, then micro, small and medium. We need to have a credit culture, and it has to permeate down the line. Because when you talk of consumer credit, how do you start appraising an individual who perhaps wants to buy a television on credit or buy a generator on credit? You need to have his credit rating. You need to know who you are dealing with in terms of character. So it's very, 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 very important. Then you need the credit guarantee scheme as well. Because lenders tend to bear the risks solely. But you need credit sharing, risk sharing mechanisms in place. The lenders will feel more comfortable, right, if there are ways they can hedge some of those
What are some
risks.
of the examples of those risk sharing mechanisms that can be put in place?
I talked about credit guarantee scheme. When you lend to a customer, that exposure needs to be guaranteed. We have it in so many other countries, right? But we don't have an effective one in Nigeria. Like in Brazil, the BNDES, which is about the biggest DFI they have a credit guarantee scheme which is a subsidiary of BNDES. So the customers of BNDES, their facilities are guaranteed by that scheme. So that if anything goes wrong, it's not only the lender that bears the brunt, that it is shared, right? And then what Professor Payne was also talking about, secondary debt market, right? It speaks to the quality of the risk assets as well. Once the primary lenders don't come up with quality risk assets, those with long-term funds will not participate in secondary markets, like the pension fund managers, like the insurance companies. They have access to huge pool of resources, low fund resources. I mean, I don't want to call them cheaper, right? But low rate resources which you can use to finance the real sector. But because of the perception, the risk perception of SMEs, there are restrictions as to what insurance companies can do, as to what pension, and areas in which the pension firms can also invest in. Most of them run away from supporting SMEs because of the risk. In other climes, too, you have insurance companies insuring loans, right? But most insurance companies in Nigeria today are reluctant, right, to play in that space because of the risk perception, right, of the MSMEs. So we have to talk about an ecosystem. There was a study conducted, 2021 study conducted by Smeden and NBS. They were looking at the factors that mitigate against the development of the enterprises in Nigeria. They ranked access to credit as number one, 27%, followed by lack of training in entrepreneurship and vocational skills, then infrastructure, as well as conflicting policies. So the other three, if they're taken care of, lenders will be more comfortable supporting those sectors. In other words, we need to build the capacity of our people to be able to come up with bankable proposals. We need entrepreneurs in the large critical mass, right? Quality entrepreneurs. Would this surprise you that foreigners are thriving in the Nigerian economy? I dare say much better than Nigerians. Because they have entrepreneurial capacity, they have the culture. A lot of Lebanese, a lot of Indians, a lot of Chinese. Lebanese have been in Nigeria for more than 100 years, and they keep coming back.
So would you say, sir, would you say that it's the issue of having a structure? Because when you talk to a lot of Nigerians, you have great ideas. Yesterday, our guest was telling us about, an entrepreneur who is preserving mangoes, since we have a lot of mangoes now. But she cannot expand because of lack of access to capital. So would you say for people like that, it's the problem of they don't know how to put their plans into paper, structured, well-structured, to be able to access capital, or is it other things?
Yeah, but 11 years ago, KPMG and the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-Atlantic University, they conducted a study, and they came up with an acronym, MISFIT, in terms of challenges facing MSMEs in Nigeria. One of the was S, that's support. A lot of entrepreneurs don't have the support. And this support should come from BDSPs, Business Development Service Providers, the SME consultants who will help them put the proposals together, make them bankable, ensure that they get the facility from the lenders, and when they get the lenders, they are properly utilized and repaid. So a lot of support is required. Most of them lack information, which is which is part of the MISFIT there, acronym for MISFIT. So many of them are not informed. So we need a lot of BDSPs. That was why the federal government came up with the BDSP certifying arrangement recently, being driven by the Small and Medium Enterprise Development Agency of Nigeria. I am part of that process. We need a lot of BDSPs in Nigeria to support our people. The Kaduna Business School is part of the process, as well as the Enterprise Development Center of the Pan-Atlantic University. They've been training BDSPs to ensure that only certified BDSPs are allowed to practice in Nigeria to support entrepreneurs and guide them properly. So our people need a lot of more information. Because in the holy books, our people perish for lack of knowledge. We need a lot of information. This is a very well-blessed country. But many Nigerians are not aware of the business opportunities in this country. I beg to say that foreigners are better informed about business opportunities in Nigeria and how to harness them. I was speaking with a lady the other day who was saying that she used to buy charcoal from Jebba and export to China. But now Chinese have gone to Jebba themselves, they dislodge Nigerians. And this is happening in many other areas. So we need to build our people to become entrepreneurs who can compete, not only in Nigeria, but also globally, particularly in the advent of the African Continental Free Trade Area. We need to build the capacity up. So capacity should come first before we start talking about capital or credit. Because capital also includes equity investments, right? It's not only credit. In fact, when you're starting your business, you shouldn't start with credit. You shouldn't start with loan. Start with your own personal savings or support you can get from family and friends and those in business school they call fools. Not because they are foolish or just because, they learn to use the support on sentimental grounds. But key to that is also credit. It's also character. Because before anybody can support you, they must have confidence in you. That speaks to who you are. So whatever you do, if you have a good business plan, you have integrity, you have character, you have people who will invest in you, even in your environment, in your community. When you have a good track record, that's when you'll be able to meet the risk acceptance criteria of lenders. So you don't start with loan. Start with your savings and support from family members or even grants.
I am sure, if we didn't hear anything else, we heard that. Don't start with loan. Start with the... I know they call them fools, but as you said, they're not fools. They're just kind-hearted individuals. But thank you so much for your time. Former Managing Director of Bank of Industry and Chief Executive Officer of WVL Development Advisors. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, my pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. So let's take a break now. When we come back, we head to the commodity space, and we are still looking forward to that malaria conversation. Don't want to go anywhere.
My name is Austin Azuko Kocha, but you all call me JJ. That's because I was so unstoppable. They named me twice. During my days as a professional footballer, I played as an attacking midfielder. When I was a kid growing up in the cold city of Enugu, I had just one dream, and that was to be an unstoppable professional footballer with titles and records to my name. Yes, I went ahead to win titles in Europe and Africa during my playing days. Those days, there were times when it was difficult for me to perform due to injuries or when it seemed that I was out of form. But you know what? I never stayed down. I remained unstoppable. In fact, I always came back better, dribbling in an unstoppable way, assisting goals and scoring goals. No one could stop me, not even malaria, when mosquito bites. Now you too can be unstoppable if you use Lonat against malaria.
Lonat, a combination of Artemether and lumefantrine. Lonat, be unstoppable.
34 million hectares of arable land. Over 200 million people. One nation. Home to Africa's fertilizer company. Dangote Fertilizer. Pure urea fertilizer. With one single-minded passion to feed Nigeria. Every bag is a potential, an aspiration to turn this green nation into the biggest food basket of Africa. Dangote Fertilizer.
Welcome back to watching Business Morning on Sunrise Daily. Now let's head to the commodity space with Dr. Adesola Sumoni joins us from Reading in the United Kingdom. Hi, Adesola. Good morning. Thank you for joining us a second time this week. I cannot hear you. I think you should unmute. I see your lips moving, but I cannot hear you. Can you hear me? Okay, maybe you should say something. Let's see if...
Good morning,
okay,
Eni.
Great.
Thank you for having me on the show.
You're muted. Yeah, thank you so much for coming. So, Naira depreciated again. I know we discussed this on Tuesday when you're on the show, but we've still continued on that trend. And I don't know, do you see it steadying at some point? Is there something we have missed to take us away from the positive trend?
Thank you for that question, Ini. First, let me start by saying I believe the Naira is trying to find its value. I think that's what's happening. However, the market is not as liquid as it should be, and that is part of why we are seeing such a continuous trend in the depreciation of the Naira. And this raises an interesting question, essentially, that, how can we improve liquidity in the markets? Well, if you consider our sources of FX, first, if you look at oil revenues, like I mentioned on Tuesday, a huge portion of the oil revenues are already committed, and as a result, we do not receive the full inflow from selling oil. In addition to that, there's also leakages coming from attacks on oil infrastructure, illegal oil miners, etc. So the next point is foreign portfolio investment. Already we are seeing some inflow of foreign portfolio investment. Year to date, the central bank has increased our benchmark interest rate by around 600 basis points. At the next meeting, we expect somewhere around 100 basis points more increase in benchmark interest rate. I think this is attractive for foreign portfolio investors as well. We are already seeing some inflows in that regard. Just last week, we saw around 600 million USD come into the market. We are also seeing, so the next fund is also foreign direct investment. Unfortunately, we are seeing a reverse trend. We are seeing a lot of multinationals leave the country, particularly because of the tough operating environment. I think there's much more that the government can do in terms of improving the business environment and attracting more and more foreign direct investment. And next, we need to talk also to multilaterals, the World Bank, the IMF, Afrexim, AFDB, to get some form of funding. Just last week, I mentioned the Minister of Finance, Mr. Wale Edun, announced that Nigeria had gotten, I think, a $2.2 billion US loan from the World Bank, which I think once that hits the market, that would improve the flow of FX. That would improve liquidity in the market. And finally, we may need to go to the Eurobond market to get some more loans. First, to fix the budget, to plug the budget deficit, but also the foreign exchange would also help improve liquidity in the market.
All right, Desola, thank you so much for that. We certainly hope that, as you have said, the Naira is trying to find its value, and the value will be good for all of us. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Senior Associate of Financial Derivatives Company.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we really have to rush now and get to that malaria conversation. And joining us for that conversation are two individuals. The first is pharmacist Derek Osondu. He's the General Manager, Sales and Marketing, Green Life Pharmaceuticals Limited. And it's not balanced without a woman. So you have Chidinma Chibo, the General Manager, Business Development, Strategy and Customer Experience, Clearline HMO. Good to have you, health people today on this World Malaria Day. But I think the first thing would be to know the relationship between Green Life Pharmaceuticals and Clearline HMO. Ladies first. Okay. Sorry.
All right. Thank you very much for having us this morning.
Good to have you.
Green Life Pharmaceuticals is just a partner, and we are on this journey trying to eradicate malaria. So, I mean, what worthy partner do you want to get than a giant in the industry who are renowned for producing one of the most effective ACTs that's targeted at curing this scourge called malaria? Yes, so that's the partnership we have.
Oh, thank you, Chidinma, for that. And thank you for having us on the station. As you all know, today is World Malaria Day.
Yeah.
And what better partner than to choose a health management organization to help us fight this? So just to say a little about it, Green Life Pharmaceuticals is a leading indigenous pharmaceutical company. We're marketing and distribution concern based in Lagos, Southwest Nigeria. And like we need to tell the general public, our vision is to be the vanguard of healthy living and choice companion for all our publics.
Great. So since today is World Malaria Day, conversations are going about eradication as the theme indicates. Vaccine is also another conversation going on. Maybe you should tell us, Green Life, what you're doing. She said you're a giant today. So tell us what makes you a giant fighting malaria, especially at this time.
The slogan for this year is that we should accelerate the fight against malaria for a more equitable world. And you see, malaria seems to affect sub-Saharan Africa disproportionately if you compare it to other areas of the world. So if there was a study that was done in 2001 by a certain Gallup and Sachs, and he said that Africa loses about 12 billion annually in lost GDP because of malaria. So WHO advocates that we should control, prevent, and treat malaria. So our own area where we're very strong is treatment, and that's why we came up with the gold standards for treatment, which is the ACTs. And like she pointed out, our flagship brand, which is Lonat, is one of the strongest ACTs that we use to fight against malaria. And it's affordable and cost-effective. And we've made it very, very available for everyone, and it's really helping to control and take care of this scourge called malaria.
So unfortunately, there's still news of people dying of malaria. You know, that's so sad, because you'd have thought in sub-Saharan Africa, we've lived with malaria so much that, you know, nobody would have to. Perhaps it's because the HMOs do not allow us, you know, the affordability of it.
Okay, so I like the point, all right. Like you pointed out, the theme for this year is accelerating the fight against malaria for a more equitable world, all right. I mean, for the underserved, for the slums of the world, you know, there's the sensitization, it's not very great as it were right now. All right, what we are doing as a HMO, he pointed out the 3 keys: prevention, treatments, all right, and diagnosing, you know, this malaria. So when we come in prevention, all right, we have design plans, you know, in our organizations that are very affordable. Please, very affordable. I mean, we are a proponent to achieving the universal health coverage. When everybody has access to health care, people begin to, there's the health-seeking behavior that comes with having access to, you know, health care. And, you know, people begin to seek quick intervention when they fall ill. But we don't want people falling ill. What we are big on doing in our HMO is the prevention part of it. All right, we feel that if we are able to prevent this condition, everybody will all be optimized in whatever we are doing. Because when you fall sick, you're out of work. All right, but when you stay healthy, you're productive. All right, and the economy is more productive. So we are all about prevention. All right, having to take the campaign to the communities, having to let them know what they can do in their spaces to keep away the mosquitoes that will bring the malaria, all right? Interventions, bringing interventions that would help them stay healthy. Like, you know, part of what we're doing for the World Malaria Day this year, like we've done other years, is one community at a time, reaching out to the underserved communities, taking information to them, very much needed information, sensitization, you know, and then taking incentives like the mosquito net. All right, we have testings done. We have drugs being prescribed right there, all right, to those communities. We've done it for some communities. And today, we're not living out. We are going to a community where we are taking this one step at a time, you know, reaching more people, letting them know what this scourge is, how to prevent it, all right, and how to get treated if they fall ill.
And we hope you don't wait for just when it's World Malaria Day.
That's why I said we are big on prevention. All right, so we go to not just for World Malaria Day alone. We take the much needed information that the people need to stay healthy, both malaria, you know, and other ailments. All right, so that's what we play big on in our HMO. And then secondly, is creating very affordable plans that will ensure that all Nigerians have access to health care.
So let me come to you. You have Lonats. Tell us the assurance you give your customers or potential customers. They talk about fake drugs and things like that. Are there features you can look out for to be sure?
Yeah, most definitely. There's a feature on the pack. It's called MAS. It's a form of mobile authentication service in which people can scratch and text to a certain dedicated line to confirm the authenticity or otherwise of the brand they have in their hand. But let me also add, we're taking it a step further. We're in talks with the regulator and some private individuals to bring in what we call track and trace. So it means that we're going to be able to track our brands from the point of entry into Nigeria to the point of consumption. So it's an end-to-end solution in how we intend in the very near future to protect our brand from fake. But what we can assure you now is that we do a lot of last mile distribution. So most often than not, the products you find in reputable pharmacies are genuine and good to use.
I would have talked about, making those products actually in Nigeria, but I mean, we're really out of time. I hope we have plans for that in the nearest future.
Yes, very true. We have plans. It's part of our long-term strategy to produce these drugs locally.
We're looking forward to that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, ladies and gentlemen. Chidinma Chigbo, General Manager, Business Development Strategy and Customer Experience, Clearline HMO, and also pharmacist Derek Osondu, GM Sales and Marketing with Green Life Pharmaceuticals.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. And happy World Malaria Day.
Yeah, happy World Malaria Day.
I wish you the same. We're looking forward to eradicating it.
Yes. Yes, we will be on the fight. And we will win.
We'll win.
Thank you.
I really have to apologize to Sunrise Daily, my colleagues. You have to forgive me today. Let's take a bit of commercial and then we'll head straight to the Sunrise Daily Studios. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I think Ayo, Melta, and Kayla, you have forgiven me already. I take that.
What? Now this is more like it, right? We want the best quality ingredients when we cook. But when it comes to salt, we care less. We say salt is salt. Well, I care about my salt. It goes into my food and my body. So I use Dangote salt. Dangote salt is high-quality salt that is refined and iodized to give great taste to my meals and also to support my family's health and well-being. It's time to care about your salt.
Recall that yesterday, 22nd April 2024, I represented the force at a conference on national security and state police at the Continental Hotel, where I made expression of some opinion inadvertently attributed to the Inspector General of Police. Those expressions are my personal opinion to stimulate discussion. They do not represent the position of the IG nor the force leadership. The Inspector General of Police in due course will make the position of the force on this known.
There you have Mr. Ben Okolo there explaining his own views at that summit on the state police, basically saying, no, the views that were shared were basically mine and not that of the Inspector General of Police or the police force. And we decided to bring that to your memory before we start up this conversation on state policing. But before we do that, we do have some breaking news right now. 119 inmates. So we're seeing the story here from the correctional facility in Abuja. 119 inmates have escaped from the 3,000 capacity medium security custodial center in Suleja in Niger State. And according to the Deputy Superintendent of Corrections Command Public Relations Officer FCT Commandant AS Duza. It happened last night, and this is following the rains that they say destroyed parts of the custodial facility. Recapturing mechanisms have been activated, and so far 10 of the fleeing inmates have been recaptured. So we're seeing that story right now. It's developing. We do hear that the Minister of Interior is making plans right now. He had to cancel a meeting this morning because they are on their way to that custodial facility in Suleja, Niger State. 119 inmates. That's quite a large number of people to be missing at this point in time. You know, at a time when we are trying to keep the place secure. That facility really has been the subject of a lot of conversations recently because it is very old, and a lot of these correctional facilities need to be repaired. Most of them are colonial, you know.
Some of them were built by the colonial masters. But you do know that our first guest, Mr. Shitu, talked about the role of the correctional centers in the
justice delivery.
Justice delivery. So that also needs to be considered. And in a way, it also ties into this matter of state policing. Policing here, I use policing, not police. Now, it still ties into this matter of the locals, everybody being involved in this matter of security. We don't just shift it and say, hey, shift it to the other person, or it is this institution that needs to do it. It is something that we all need to be involved in. In our conversation yesterday, one of the guests talked about addressing this matter from the angle of the curriculum, included into the educational curriculum from the primary up to the tertiary institutions, so that everybody is educated as we go along. And even the National Orientation Agency getting involved as well to educate Nigerians about the matter of security. Kayla, it's not just a small thing. It's a huge thing that everybody needs to get into.
I think everyone is trying to, you know,
to buy into it. But let's get our guest in here to talk about this. Joining us to discuss this matter of state police, the conversation around the state police, is Mr. I want to get that name right, Mr. Okechukwu Nwanguma, who's the Executive Director, Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, RULAC. He joins us virtually. Mr. Nwanguma, thank you for joining us.
Good morning. My pleasure.
Let's start off from this news that's just coming about the correctional facility in Suleja. Over 109. You may not have heard of it, but I'm coming. Over 100 inmates have escaped. I understand that the facility was affected by the rains yesterday. If you can hear me well, it sounds like you're not hearing me well.
I'm actually having a challenge hearing you clearly. I'm not sure I hear you clearly.
Okay. Okay, so can you hear me now?
Hello?
Mr. Nwanguma, can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, I can hear you, but it's not audible enough.
Okay, let's see. Maybe Kayla will ask you that question. Let's see whether you can hear Kayla well. Kayla, ask the question.
Mr. Nwanguma, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you, but it's not quite audible.
Okay, if there's a way that we can up his volume or maybe increase the volume on your side so you can hear us very clearly. Can you hear us a little better now?
Let me see if I can join through a different device, because I can't hear you clearly.
Okay, so we'll take a moment and we'll come back to you, Mr. Nwanguma. Just, we'll come back to you in a bit. Let's resolve this matter.
Okay.
So, Kayla, what we were saying earlier about what everybody needs to do, I'm sure I also would weigh in on this, the matter of security and everybody's role in ensuring security all around them. For instance, what do you do before you go to bed? How do you manage your lighting? When you're driving on the road, how secure are you? How do you say this now? Are you environmentally aware? Are you aware of your environment? Can you describe where you are at that point in time? When you see somebody, can you give a clear description of the person you're looking at? All these things about environmental awareness, security awareness, being aware of where you are, being aware of the people around you, paying attention to even the little things that go on around you. It's not a distraction. Just be a little bit more aware of what's going on around you, who's around me, what are they saying, what are they doing, what are they wearing, so that if need be, you can actually give a description or say something about your environment. How many of us will say that we are that aware?
I think the awareness of of security is something that many Nigerians are becoming very accustomed to. With everything that's been going on, especially here in the nation's capital, there are so many mechanisms where you can report situations. People are beginning to get a little bit more aware of their environment and not just, waving through life as though there's nothing going on. But the conversation around state policing is one that, comes with a plethora of issues. We've seen, in fact, that report, I think we're going to play that report in a few minutes, I think, while we're getting Mr. Wanguma's audio to work. That issue about the problems with state policing, the issues that stop people from believing that state police can actually work, is something that needs to be ironed out. We've talked about it for a few days now, talking about, interference, talking again about, people abusing something that should be used for the benefits of the people. But you have to understand that the Nigerian people are a different set of people right now. We are people, a lot of Nigerians right now want their country to be better, want the security situation to be better in their country. So, the need for policing to be something that is free of all of this interference, is free of encumbrances, and able to provide this basic necessity for the Nigerian people is one that many Nigerians are very invested in. Would I like to work with state policing or community policing or whatever other mechanism the government wants to try? That's entirely up to them. But for now, Nigerians just really do need the state police to work. They need policing to come down to their localities. And, just so we can remind everyone of that conversation, remember there was some summits that held in the nation's capital where we're talking about, the whole conversation was about state policing. Of course, we played Mr. Ben Okolo there for you so you can understand what happened afterwards. But let's go back to that report, if we can, to give some kind of background as to how this conversation started and where we are now. So we'll be getting that report up for you at this moment.
Well, while we're getting that report ready, Kayla and NT, I like the choice of words you used. NT, Nyota, you were talking about policing, not police. I'm sure you are aware of that story that made the rounds recently somewhere in the north, I think it's Zamfara State or so, where the people in the community overpowered so-called bandits and collected some weapons and all of that from them. And, we are where we are today. So that issue of policing is quite a critical one, and not just the police. Every community have a way of protecting themselves, checkmating insecurity and all of that. But that is not to remonstrate or underscore, undermine the importance of having policing downgraded in the states. I mean, percolated, I beg your pardon, to the states and to the local governments. We had it before. What informed us collapsing it into one? We need to readdress that. We have had a second republic, we've had a third republic, now we are in a fourth republic. Now, we had it in the first republic, we collapsed it. We had a second republic and a third republic, and we didn't do anything to reverse that trend at the time. What informed it? What informed us collapsing it in the first place? Was it misused at the time? Now, all of that conversation is ongoing. Okay, if it was misused, how do we insulate it? Those are the conversations to happen, and those issues must be raised. I don't know if we now have Mr. Waguma with us now to have this conversation with us, if anyone, because at the end of the day, it's all about the rule of law. At the end of the day, it's all about whether or not we know what to do and we do the proper things. Well, Kayla was trying to bring us that report, if that, just some kind of background so we know what who has said and what who needs to say so that we can make progress in this particular regard. Is it ready? Let's roll it now.
Keeping an eye on diseases emerging and re-emerging. Observe the body respond to the miracle of treatment. Watching requirements of medicine modified and the way we look at health evolve.
Bone marrow transplantation is not surgery. I always like to reiterate that. It's actually like transfusing blood into your vein.
Keep pace with new trends and find the answers. See the full picture on Health Matters, because you deserve to know.
To tackling insecurity.
Former head of state, General Abdulsalami Abubakar, former President Goodluck Jonathan, federal lawmakers, security agencies, members of the diplomatic corps, traditional and religious leaders attend a one-day policy dialogue on state policing system. The event, which is organized by the House of Representatives and the Policy and Legal Advocacy Center, comes as the National Assembly prepares for another round of constitution amendments.
There are lots of people who are very, very anxious that the police be reformed, that the police be given more powers, be given more responsibility. Perhaps that the way to go might actually be to decentralize the police in a way that ensures that the decentralization of the police safeguards it from abuse.
The prospect of a state-level policy architecture, which is at the heart of this dialogue, is paramount, given the imperatives of addressing the scourge of crime, insurgency, and various forms of violence that are impacting on Nigeria's development trajectory, thereby presenting a threat to the well-being and safety of all citizens.
In the previous assembly, the state police bill was rejected by federal lawmakers who feared that state governors may abuse the system. It appears the federal legislature is shifting grounds, just as former heads of states throw their weight behind the creation of state police to address the security concerns across the country.
As we explore the models of state policing that have been successful in other nations, we must be judicious in adopting these frameworks to fit our unique Nigerian situation.
We are not going to debate, and we should not waste our time debating whether we should have state police or not. Listening to the speaker, he gave the history. Even in this country, we operated it before. Why is that the military scrapped it? Because of the abuse. And that is the area we should concentrate on.
As much as we are talking of establishing state police, we should also look into the role vis-a-vis of our royal fathers.
The current police leadership and its parent ministry, however, appear not to be in accord on the matter of state police.
I will emphasize that state police can enhance local responsiveness, improve crime prevention, and strengthen security at the grassroots level. I will recommend an institutional and legal framework that delineates the roles, responsibilities, and jurisdiction of state police forces within the broader national security architecture.
It is the submission of the leadership of the Nigerian police force that Nigeria is yet to mature and ready for the establishment of state-controlled police. This is due to the underlying reasons. One, there is no adequate resources in place for police infrastructure. Again, there are potential for abuse of power by state political leadership.
For President Bola Tinubu, who is represented by his vice, deliberations on state police must be thorough to produce workable resolutions.
The President deserves commendation for his openness and proactive stance towards the idea of reforming and decentralizing the police force. The concept of state policing is not merely a policy proposal, but a potential milestone in the evolution of our law enforcement framework.
In the last administration, 25 states delayed consideration of the constitution amendment bills sent by the National Assembly because the National Assembly did not include the establishment of state police. Also, immediate past President Muhammadu Buhari openly rejected the idea of a state policing system. Terry Ikumi, Channels Television News.
Thank you for staying with us. Mr. Wanguma, are you there? Can you hear us now?
Yes, I can hear you better now.
Okay, We thank God for technology, and sometimes technology tends to do this to us.
Yeah,
okay, so that question I asked earlier about this matter of state policing and of state police, and the fact that, for instance, the Suleja, we understand that there are some inmates that escaped from Suleja last night, and the Minister of Interior is on his way there at the moment. But if we had this matter of state police sorted, where the citizens are more aware and are part of the policing procedure around them, do you think there will be this kind of things will be reduced?
So I think that there are two ways to look at this. First of all is the argument about decentralization, and I think that there is a consensus around the need to decentralize the police. And before I even talk about that, I think there is need for clarity about
Ooh, looks like technology is doing us in again. Mr. Wanguma, you're frozen if you can hear us. You know what? We would still try as much as possible to get back to Mr. Wanguma. He was going to say something about the two ways to look at this matter. I guess he was going to start out from the point of, yes, everyone's agreed about has agreed that there has to be a decentralization of the policing structure in the country. Now, the argument remains, how do we go about it? What processes need to be put in place? What institutions need to be brought in? What are the adjustments that need to be done? Honestly, Kayla, I don't think this can be done from the executive or the legislature or the judicial, whichever way we want to look at it. It cannot be done from one side alone. It will take the entire nation for this whole thing to work.
I mean, looking at this particular breaking story from Niger State right now, so recapturing mechanisms have been put in place. If there's state police, if the community, if policing is at a community level, let's put it that way. If policing is at a community level, we will be able to, I think it'll be easier because people can note who's in their area.
Let's see, Mr. Wanguma, are you back now? You were frozen on air.
Yes, I'm sorry. I don't know what happened.
It's okay.
It's okay.
It's okay. So let's get to your submission.
Yeah, so I was trying to say that the whole argument about decentralization is valid because the police can only be effective if there is partnership. If police is in touch with the community, they serve. So, but the whole argument about state police, it has thrown up a lot of debates, and people seem to entertain some fears about state police in the way it is being presented. Because if we talk about decentralization, yes, we need to decentralize the police because it is this centralized structure of the police that has made police effectiveness, a challenge. But state police, decentralization cannot mean state police alone. There are those who have argued that at the moment, policing resources and policing authority are centralized at the headquarters. If there is a way to devolve policing authority and policing resources, funding for the police are trapped at headquarters and don't, devolve. They don't trickle down to the local levels. So the local levels are not unable to get resources to do what they need to do. In the absence of funds, they resort to extortion, which is what has led to these fears about what the police can do. And if you look at the reports of the various police reform committees set up by successive administrations, the reforms recommended to address police inefficiency have not been implemented at all. So, and this is where the problem lies. Whereas we agree that the police as it is not effective, there is a question as to whether state police is the answer to addressing police effectiveness.
I mean, that's a very important, point that you just raised there. The effectiveness of the police. And it's interesting that you talk of the issue of funding, especially when it comes to policing at local levels. It's very, very intensive when it comes, very intense when it comes to funding. It's very important. But I want you to be able to get your thoughts on a few of the things that people are afraid of. How in your way of explaining this, how do you think that the interference that many people are very afraid of, the abuse of the state police, how do you think that it can be handled? In just a few seconds, if you can.
So, yes. So I was at the national dialogue that was organized by the House of Representatives, and I did. I was one of those who spoke, and I did point out the concerns that people have about the fact that many state governors, in addition to controlling executive powers, have also, also in control of, have crippled judicial and legislative authority and have privatized the local governments. Now, the state governors, many of them are not able to pay their workforce, including even pensioners. So there is this concern about at two levels. One is the fear that the state governors will use state police. If we give them state police, they will use state police as an armament to shrink the civic space. They will abuse it. Secondly, how would they fund it when they're not able to fund, when they're not able to pay salaries of workers and pensioners?
Okay.
So if you look
Mr.
at
Mr. Wanguma, we really have to go at this point in time. I do apologize for interrupting you there, but we're completely out of time. I want to thank you so much for coming in. I'm sure we'll come back to this conversation. Of course, technology didn't help us today. We'll hopefully bring you back into the studio so that we can tidy up this conversation with your submissions as well. Mr. Okechukwu Wanguma is the Executive Director of the Rule of Law and Accountability Advocacy Center, RULAC. He joined us virtually from Lagos. Thank you so much. And that is where we would have to say thank you for letting us be a part of your morning. It's been, how do you say, the roller coaster? Well, thank you once again. I'm Neota Egbe.
Have a wonderful day ahead, everyone. I'm Kayla Magwa.
We do apologize for the interruptions, but certainly we'll be here fresh and bright tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. I'm Ayo Makinde.